whenever you fish brush piles, I always like to, number one, either get them in a specific location on a piece of structure, whether it be a ledge or a point or a bank. And then you want to try to get a good lineup or a reference, and that's two things, two objects, two trees, two somethings to where you can make a cast over them. Now, whenever you're fishing brush piles, fish relate to them differently. Sometimes the fish will be down in them, sometimes they'll be up above them, sometimes they'll actually even be off to the side of them. So one thing I'll usually always, a Texas rig worm is really a good brush pile bait, and also crankbaits and jigs and worms and different things. But I always like to, when I very first come into a brush pile, a lot of times I may throw a crankbait or something to come over the top of that brush to try to catch any fish that are either on the edge of it or up above it. And then I may go pick up my plastic worm or my jig and then try to get the bait down into the cover, down into the brush. And sometimes you'll find, I've even found at times, like say a brush pile in 14 feet of water, I've actually, everybody thinks, oh, well, I've got to hit the brush. And what you got to be careful of sometimes, like if you throw like a DT16 or a DT20, something that dives real deep and gets under the brush, a lot of times I've caught them on like a DT10, something I could just barely tick the tops of the limbs of that brush pile. And I think you'll find it wise to kind of play with your crankbaits and learn the specific depth that those baits will run, say on 10 pound, 12 pound, 14 pound, because a lot of times you can take say a 10-foot running bait and put it on 15-pound line, and you can cause that bait to only run 7 or 8 feet. So if you kind of know how deep the top of your brush is, then you can kind of work that bait over the top of it. Get my boat turned around here, and then that's another big thing to me. And then, like I said, whenever you're fishing brush, your line size can vary. I mean, I've seen times, like say maybe if you're fishing for spotted bass in Georgia, you may be using spinning tackle and 6 or 8 pound line. If you're in more dirty water, you may go up to even 20, 25 pound line, because, a lot of times you can get your line broke, pretty easy fishing brush. And what you want to do is you want to pull it up into the brush, feel the cover, and a lot of times don't be in a real big hurry to drag it out of there. A lot of times, like I'll kind of take it and pop it over a limb, watch my line as it falls, and I'll actually try to get it over a limb. And especially when you get up into the late summer, say July, August, a lot of times those fish, they'll be in those brush piles, and a lot of times you almost have to get it over a limb and seesaw it, just up and down. Say get over a limb and pull it up till you feel the limb, let it back down. Now, every now and then you'll get your feelings hurt, because you'll get a hold of something, it'll grab it and run back over the limb and break your line. But a lot of times, don't be in a big hurry to pull it out of there. A lot of times, leave it in the brush a while, seesaw it up and down, soak it maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I've seen a lot of times, especially ledge fishing in the summer, when the longer you left that bait in there, that jig or that worm, whatever it was, the more bites you would get. And people a lot of times they feel a piece of brush and they think, oh, I don't want to get hung, so they try to pull it up over that limb real quick and get it away from it. And a lot of times that's not the thing to do in brush. A lot of times you want to leave it in there as long as you can, and it's kind of like we were talking about earlier about making multiple casts to a piece of shallow cover. A lot of times that bass is in there, and by the longer you leave it in there and the more you seesaw it up and down, you aggravate him into biting, or you get him interested in it. Got him on the flutter worm, but he was up in the top of the brush right there, just kind of hanging out. And when I pulled the worm up, all I did was felt a little pressure, and he just started pulling down. So I'm gonna let him go, and a lot of times see if I can throw back in there and get another bite. Whenever you're using a marker on brush, when you idle over it or you troll over it with your trolling motor, always throw it off to the side. Don't drop it just straight down, because what you'll inevitably have happen is you'll put it right on top of the brush, you'll get a bite, and the fish will get into the marker buoy. So always try to get the buoy off to the side of the brush pile or the piece of cover that you want to mark. So, and you're just kind of using that marker as a reference, as a guide to help you, know the general vicinity of where that brush is. But that way it'll keep your bait from getting hung. There's some of that brush right there. I just barely hit the edge of it right there. The part of the country that there's one. There's one right there coming out of that brush pile right there. Now, as soon as I felt that fish thump it, I got on him as fast as I could right there, because I don't want to give that fish much time to get back down in that cover and either break my line or hang me up in it. So, as you noticed, as soon as I felt that thump, I reeled down and set the hook on that bass just as fast as I could. And that's another thing. Sometimes fishing brush piles, you will get your feelings hurt, but that's a nice bass right there. But, fishing brush, a lot of times, it's relative to the part of the country you live in and the clarity of water. If you live on a lake that's got a lot of dirty water and, low visibility, then it's very possible that your brush piles may not be very deep. They may be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 foot deep, In other parts of the country where you have 10, 12 foot visibility, your brush piles may be 15, 20, 25 foot deep. So, it's the same no matter where you go. A lot of times your line size and your size of your worms may vary. It may be the size of your weight, but it's all relatively the same thing no matter where you live.
Check us out at wired2fish.com.